Good evening, and thank you very much for those kind words and for this wonderful award. Peter Sutherland was a towering figure in Irish public life, and I am deeply honoured to have my name associated with his. I met him only twice. The first time was in the early 1980s when he was Attorney General, and I was newly arrived as a graduate student at Harvard. We met at an event in the Kennedy Library in Boston. At the time, I was trying to decide whether to stay in the US or to return to Ireland, and I asked his advice. Without hesitation, he told me to stay in America. He said there wasn't a decent job to be had in Ireland. I often thought about this conversation in the years that followed, as I observed him, from Ireland, occupy one glittering position after another. The next time we met was 30 years later, when he was chair of the London School of Economics and I was Vice-Chancellor of St Andrews. He tried to poach me. Much as I was tempted by the prospect of a move to London and working with him, I told him I simply couldn't do it, as I'd only been at St Andrews 2 years. He then tried to persuade the board of BP, where he had recently been chair, to appoint me to the board. But I'm afraid he didn't succeed in that either. They wouldn't have me. Peter Sutherland well understood that one could be a citizen of the world and a citizen of someplace. He was both proudly Irish and a committed internationalist, with deep connections and many friends, colleagues and admirers, both locally and across the globe. In this way, he has been a model and an inspiration for those of us who have had international careers without ever losing our deep sense of being Irish and commitment to Ireland. I left my home in Tramore shortly after my 17th birthday to go to university, and until a year ago, I never left. Today, I run a foundation based in New York and founded by Andrew Carnegie more than a century ago. Carnegie emigrated from Scotland as a child with his impoverished family. They landed in Pittsburgh, and he worked as a bobbin boy in a cotton factory for the principal sum of $1.20 a week. He went on to become the richest man in the world, with a net worth equivalent to $309 billion today, significantly more than Elon Musk. When he sold Carnegie Steel to JP Morgan, the price was equivalent to more than 2% of the US GDP. Unlike other magnates of the time, he was uncomfortable with his wealth and resolved to give it all away. In his book, The Gospel of Wealth, he famously wrote that the man who dies rich dies disgraced. He had educated himself by borrowing books from the private library of a local merchant, so he set about building free public libraries to give others the opportunity to educate themselves too. He built over 2,500 of them, including 66 in Ireland. He was committed to education and to promoting peace, and created an early version of the League of Nations, the League of Peace. Shortly before the end of his life, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to give away all his money, so he put the residue of his fortune together to create the Carnegie Corporation of New York, which is the organization I now lead, and which continues to support initiatives advancing education and international peace. I've been asked to say a few words about leadership, but we've already witnessed several extraordinary examples of that this evening, so I'll be brief. My perspective, of course, comes from that of running universities. Increasingly, we require university leaders to play multiple roles simultaneously. We wish them, like church leaders, to stand above politics. We place them at the symbolic heart of ceremonies that retain their medieval rituals. We wish them to create unity, fellowship, and a sense of the transcendent ethical value of a university, to provide a public face for fairness and tolerance. But we also want leaders to behave like CEOs of large companies with operations in multiple countries. My annual operating budget at Oxford was over $3 billion. We want them to be conversant with credit ratings, to oversee IPOs, to pursue multi-million-dollar deals, to be keen-eyed and tough negotiators. As Vice-Chancellors, we often have to mediate between worlds whose habits and priorities are imperfectly aligned. It's a diplomatic role as much as a managerial one. Modern university leaders then need to straddle the different conceptions and functions of their role, to be able to raise money but also to raise spirits, to broker deals but also to break bread regularly with those who teach and learn within their walls. They need to create financial trust but also to be trusted to do the best for their colleagues and students. University leaders must be Janus-faced, always looking to the past and to the future, and ready to perform simultaneously a protective and proactive role, to soften change for institutions with long and noble histories of continuity, and to advocate change that will allow these institutions to grow and meet the challenges of the modern world. In many ways, then, I believe that leading a university is a more complex role than leading a business. But the fundamentals are similar. Leadership is not just about what you give out, but about what you bring out in others. Its key aim is to inspire people to want to give of their best. Ultimately, I see leadership not as a chess game where one seeks to eliminate opponents from the board, but rather a relay race in which the ultimate aim of good leadership is to transfer positive momentum to others to lead when one leads off. I think that's a conception of leadership that Peter Sutherland would have appreciated. Thank you very much indeed.